Career-ending blunders when employees cross the line.
True stories from Reddit.
So I was working in the ICU with this married couple. The husband seemed pretty normal, honestly. The wife was a bit energetic, let's say, but still seemed reasonable enough. Or so we thought. Turns out, this woman was writing herself death threat letters. One was even written in blood, no clue if it was hers or not, and leaving them in her own locker. Then she put on this whole dramatic performance, crying and panicking every time she found one of these letters. She started spreading rumors and tried to pin the blame on this other coworker she didn't get along with, who obviously had nothing to do with any of this BS. The whole thing escalated fast. We had to bring in the police. They decided we needed security guards on our floor 24/7. Every single employee who worked those shifts when the letters appeared got interrogated. Finally, they set up a camera in the locker room, and that's when they caught this psycho planting the letters in her own damn locker. Obviously, she got fired immediately. Her poor husband had to keep working with all of us while this drama was unfolding. He eventually just quit too. I felt so bad for the guy. Everyone was constantly gossiping about his crazy wife.
This is a long story, but basically, this dude kept pissing on the ficus tree in our conference room. At first, the janitors thought it was rodents living in the walls, so we completely tore apart the wall. That didn't help, so they hung up a camera in the room. Everyone knew there was a camera there. The whole office was talking about how we'd finally figure out what was going on. The guy got caught on camera, but he absolutely refused to admit he was pissing on the ficus tree. HR was like, okay, just don't do it anymore. This was an old school company where they didn't fire people unless you literally murdered your boss. They caught the guy again about a week later. He denied it again, even though you could clearly see him pissing on the plant in the video footage. So HR moved him to the other end of the building, right next to the bathroom. Finally, someone had the brains to get rid of the ficus tree, but this guy didn't stop. He just started pissing in the corner of his office instead. That's when they finally fired him.
This is the dumbest fuck up ever. I work at a place that makes chemicals for blood typing. One day we got this new guy in our production lab, and it became pretty obvious right away that he'd completely lied about his previous lab experience. Someone asked him whether the liquid he'd added was glycerin or BSA. This absolute genius stuck his finger into the liquid, licked it, and said, "Tastes salty, so I'm guessing it's BSA." Needless to say, he was fired on the spot. BSA is bovine serum albumin. If that's what it actually was, then ew! Not to mention the contamination risk and the fact that
I used to work at a post office. December was always crazy busy, so we'd hire like 10 temp drivers and 30 mail carriers. One temp mail carrier would load up his truck with mail, leave the post office, dump everything in the trash, and just fuck off for the rest of the day. When this came to light, he got fired and charged with a felony. Turns out destroying mail in those quantities is classified as an act of domestic crime, since so many official documents go through the postal system. The guy is still a deadbeat, and now he can't leave the country because he's on some international watch list.
I worked as an insurance salesman for a short time. When I got to the office, there was this one guy who was absolutely crushing it in policy sales. By the time I'd been there a quarter, he was recognized as the top salesman in the entire country. We even threw a corporate banquet to celebrate his success. A week later, he came into the office and quit. We were all like, WTF happened? Turns out, he'd been selling policies to either completely fake people or to friends and family members, and he was paying for the policies himself. Then, after a few months, he'd cancel all the policies. Obviously, after one successful quarter, he couldn't keep up those same numbers, so the company auditors got suspicious. It turned into a huge scandal because the company president had congratulated him in the firm's video presentation. They fired him and also demoted our office and regional managers.
A coworker I was training at an electronics store managed to steal iPads worth over $88,000. I always felt embarrassed that I didn't catch on, but it wasn't my job to babysit other employees, and he seemed like a decent enough guy. The worst part? Management knew what he was doing, but let him keep stealing so they could build a stronger case against him for a harsher sentence.
One of our sales managers told his girlfriend he was our commercial director. He stuck her into the office after hours and took her to the real director's office. But first, he swapped out the nameplate with his own name. They had sex on the couch in the office. The next day, he bragged about it to a coworker. He got fired and they threw out the couch the same day. This dude still tells this story when he's drinking beers with his buddies, thinking it's one of his greatest achievements.
One guy snuck into the office after hours to watch adult content on his computer. This was back when many people didn't have internet at home yet. He wasn't expecting one of our executives to show up at the office with a bunch of potential investors and discover him in a very compromising position. At a food factory during an important client visit, this new guy grabbed some mashed potatoes from the freezer to throw at someone and hit one of the guests. He probably could have gotten away with it on any other day, since upper management usually wasn't around us. But that day was different. He nailed one of the visiting clients with mashed potatoes. The dude got fired within an hour. He left crying his eyes out.
I was a bank teller when I was in college. Our bank had a policy where, to cash a check over a certain amount, a manager had to personally verify the transaction and sign off on the check. One day I was working at a new branch. They were constantly moving us from location to location, and this guy came in with a $25,000 check. We had enough cash for it, so I asked the manager to come over and verify the transaction. She didn't do it because she was too busy texting on her phone, so she just approved it remotely without even looking at the check or the customer, just entered our password and hit confirm from her computer. A week later, we found out the check was fake. She got fired on the spot for negligence. A salesman at my old job would sell customers what was in the store: TVs, furniture, mattresses. Then after they left, he'd log into the system and write them a discount for whatever amount he needed to buy another item, usually a TV, and take that TV home for himself. On paper, everything looked right, and nobody suspected anything, until one customer decided to return something for a refund, and that's when they discovered the discrepancy between the receipt and the system. One of my coworkers was watching adult content on his work laptop at home and unknowingly downloaded a virus. When he connected to the office VPN, the virus spread through the entire network. The network crashed and work stopped for 3 hours. IT tracked down the source, and he got fired. I mean, if someone catches a virus from an adult site these days, they must have gone way deeper than they should have. You can just hit up the Orange Hub like all normal people do. There was also this manager who shot a construction staple gun at an employee in his department who was in a wheelchair. He was screaming at the employee that he didn't even know what it was like to be disabled because he himself had a disabled brother, and that this employee was just a lazy beep trying to get out of work and faking it. The employee was in pain because of spinal cancer. The manager got fired immediately after this happened. We work in a field where you have to document every little thing you do on paper in case there's a government audit. One of my coworkers spent 6 months straight just copying and pasting his notes over and over again. The whole time, he wasn't actually seeing any clients in real life. This came to light when one of the clients called his supervisor and asked why none of us had shown up in so long, when we were supposed to be there once a week.
We were working at an accounting firm while in college. I had to do some research for work, and my supervisor gave me a printed document to check against our online database with employee data and personal numbers. They said I could do it from my dorm room. Cool. I got back home, opened the document, and there in front of me were all the names, social security numbers, birth dates, and salary amounts of everyone who worked at our community college, from the president and football coaches down to the janitors, including my own data. I was absolutely shocked. I even called campus police to escort me back to our office because I wanted to return the document to a secure location. My research supervisor got written up for being an idiot.
I worked at a grocery store, and one day 2 girls went into the produce department's back room with a bunch of fruits, vegetables, and knives. Then they filmed a Fruit Ninja video and posted it on social media. One of the girls had our manager as a friend on social media, and within 2 days they were both gone. God, I get secondhand embarrassment just writing this, even though I wasn't close with either of them. It's just so incredibly stupid.
My great-uncle worked at some factory. One day, he saw an employee get stopped at the exit because one of the supervisors thought his huge Swiss Army backpack seemed way too heavy. They opened the backpack and found a small anvil that the employee was trying to steal. The employee said, "The guys must have pranked me. I didn't even notice there was an anvil in there." Of course that wasn't true. The employee was just trying to cover his ass by pretending someone had played a joke on him. Why did he decide to steal an anvil? I guess because he wanted to use it at home. This must have happened sometime in the 1940s.
Then there was this woman who embezzled 27,000 pounds and spent it all on Facebook games. She barely even tried to cover her tracks, so they caught her pretty quickly.
This dude used his City Arena employee ID to get into an NBA championship game. Then instead of just hiding in a corner and watching the game, he flashed his security badge and got onto the actual basketball court. Coach Carlisle was not happy about this. He called arena management and complained about this maniac who was getting in everyone's way. The guy lost his arena job and eventually got kicked out of his union. If he just snuck into the game and chilled quietly, nobody would have given him grief. But he decided to push his luck until it ran out.
The breakfast cook grilled 2 10-ounce beefsteaks. When the restaurant owner asked her about it, she said a customer had called and requested them, but they were only on her lunch menu. The boss checked the phone records and didn't find anything like that. Fired her on the spot. The stupidest part is she could have just boxed them up as takeout and cooked them at home. Nobody would have suspected anything. The ironic part? She made those steaks to treat her boyfriend, who had just gotten a job for the first time in 3 years.
Thanks for watching.
Subscribe to True Stories from Reddit and smash that notification bell so you never miss these mind-blowing stories. See you in the next one.